All right, I see Miss Anna Matskan also joined, so I guess we can also start the session. So hello everyone and welcome to the semifinals of our debate tournament. In today's debate, we will have Team University of Lille and Team University of Poitiers debating on the topic of medical cannabis must be legalized by state authorities. I would like to welcome the participants from each university. We have the team from University of Lille, and that is Miss Glory Ojesanmi, Miss Valentine Lata, and Miss Camilla Chetioui. And we have University of Poitiers, we have Miss Josepha de Crecy, Miss Tsira Karmazanashvili, and Miss Leona Alijevic. And as well, we would like to welcome our honorable judges. We have Dr. Petra Lindhout, who is the program director at our university, the Hague University of Applied Sciences. We have Dr. Michaela Radvan from Masaryk University. And we have Miss Anna Matzak, who is a lecturer at the Hague University as well. And now I would like to randomize the team positions. So I have here University of Lille and University of Poitiers. The first university that came was University of Lille and the second University of Poitiers, which means that Lille will take the pro position and Poitiers will take the con position. And again, the topic for today's debate is whether or not medical cannabis must be legalized by state authorities. We will now wait 5 minutes for the participants to get ready and prepare their positions and start at 18 and 13 minutes. 12 minutes, sorry. Good luck. Now the 5 minutes are up, so I would like to invite the University of Lille to present their opening statements.
Thank you. Just before I start, may I please confirm that I'm visible and audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, dear all. My name is Glory, and I'll be arguing in favor of state authorities having to legalize cannabis for medical purposes. For this reason, I would like to start by stating that the Declaration of Alma Ata proclaims that the attainment of the highest level of health is an important globally social goal. Indeed, it is internationally recognized that good health is a precondition for the enjoyment of all other human rights. A direct consequence of the right to health is therefore the obligation for the relevant state authorities to ensure the best medicinal means to ensure the protection of the said rights. Therefore, state authorities must legalize the medicinal use of cannabis as a direct consequence. Firstly, states should legalize the medical use of cannabis because its prohibition is the fruit of a political stigmatization, with campaigns, for example, such as the famous War on Drugs of 1970 in the United States of America, rather than a medically motivated prohibition. Indeed, when the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs was adopted, the issue of drugs was of more marginal concern for states, thus orienting international response to prohibition rather than regulation. Furthermore, the Single Convention gives discretion to its signatories to outlaw cannabis for medical purposes in its second article if they deem it more appropriate. But this is actually incompatible with the predominance of the right to health and questions the relevance of this provision. In fact, the World Health Organization Expert Committee on Drug Dependence stated that the status of cannabis had not been scientifically reviewed by the committee since its predecessor under the League of Nations in 1935. Therefore, even the CJEU's classification of cannabis rendered in the cannabidiol case of November 2020, in conformity with this classification, is of questionable relevance because of the fact that it has been proven that depending on the composition of cannabis, it could actually be therapeutical and not merely psychoactive depending on the quantity of THC. Secondly, the legalization of medical cannabis should be furthermore admitted because of the fact that its medicinal use was culturally and religiously ingrained within traditional medicine in the global south. And many scientific sources show the positive effect of CBD as an alternative to chemical remedies, and the use of synthetic CBD is actually of discussion presently. You see, the 1961 Convention on Narcotic Drugs did not have a cultural and inclusive approach to medicine. And this has created difficulties for the concerned states, such as Jamaica, to position themselves vis-à-vis the relationship between national customs, the convention, and UN treaties on human and indigenous rights. This in itself is a sufficient reason to question on procedural grounds the legitimacy of the current classification of cannabis. Thirdly, the legalization of medical cannabis should not be of doubt internationally, as it is incompatible with international law to preclude the right to health because of a social stigma that actually impedes effective research. And this research would allow the broadening of studies regarding the effectiveness of cannabinoids. Such is the case, for example, within the European Union, where the Herbal Medicines Directive requires at least 30 years of scientific evidence before allowing the use of a herbal remedy. But this could not be attained with cannabis because for the first 15 years of this directive, cannabinoids were illegal in most states of the Union, while there are about 60 cannabinoids to be studied beyond THC and CBD. In conclusion, the prohibition of medical cannabis is therefore an impediment to research, a political rather than medical debate, and therefore an ultimate violation of the right to health that is, I remind you, a precondition for a human being to enjoy all other rights according to the Alma Ata Declaration. Therefore, states must inevitably legalize the use of cannabis if it is for medical purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite now the University of Poitiers to give their opening statement.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start now. Honorable judges, distinguished colleagues, my name is Leona, and with my colleagues Tsira and Josepha, we believe that medical cannabis should not be legalized by state authorities, and this for three main reasons. Our first argument is that although cannabis used for therapeutic purposes might provide a temporary relief, a prolonged use might have adverse effects on their health in the long term. And secondly, there is a high possibility that the way medical cannabis would be cultivated would corrupt the natural aspect of the plant, such as the case with THC. Finally, maybe there is no need to legalize medical cannabis, and maybe healthcare providers just need to change their approach using existing medications to better satisfy the needs of their patients in a way that gives them more control over their health. First of all, saying that medical cannabis can cause no harm is simply untrue, because every drug has side effects and some kind of harmful effects, especially if they are psychoactive, which is the case for THC. And while short-term use of cannabis could diminish some symptoms, medical cannabis affects cognitive function in the long run, and more specifically, the myelin coating, which impacts our nervous system. Studies have established that chronic cannabis use may lead to cognitive and psychomotor impairments, as well as addiction on the long term. Approximately 9% of those who experiment with marijuana will become addicted, which should not be taken lightly. Also, cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome can also occur in cases of daily long-term uses of marijuana. It is characterized by severe vomiting, as well as abdominal pain and nausea that sometimes lands people in the emergency room. The risks of medical cannabis should not be overlooked, because although people claim that it can have benefits, it also has some very serious and very real risks. Secondly, the cannabis that is sold on the market today is not as natural as we think it is. In the past decades, cultivation has become exclusively indoors, with growth cycles that have become unnaturally short and with ever-increasing levels of THC. Although most of the medicinal properties of the plant lie in the CBD, CBD actually makes up only a tiny portion of the commercial market. And what is being sold today is not natural. If medical cannabis gets legalized, how can we be so sure that the industry won't follow that same path and manipulate its chemical compounds so much that it ends up causing more harm to patients? Our third and final argument would be this. Maybe we don't even need to legalize medical cannabis, because for nearly all conditions for which marijuana has benefits, we already have existing and safe medications. Maybe healthcare providers just need to change their approach to how they treat their patients and how they receive them. We should look more into the why people are turning away from mainstream medicine and resorting to medical cannabis. Doctors have reported that what patients appreciated in medical marijuana clinics and dispensaries was that they were actually listened to. They were asked about themselves, their goals, their fears using medical cannabis. In other words, they were given control, the control that they needed over their health. And we can find other ways to give people the control that they need over their illness without turning away from mainstream medicine. It's up to the physicians and doctors to become more creative and flexible, and to listen to their patients so that they can use drugs safely to manage their symptoms. Thank you.
Okay, I would like now to invite University of Lille to present their first argument.
Thank you. May I please confirm that I'm visible and audible?
Yes.
Though we thank our adversing team for their speech and we acknowledge the problems that were raised, there are a plethora of solutions that could allow one to remediate to the problems that were brought up. For example, the risk of having an overwhelming amount of THC. You mentioned THC, however, there are over 60 cannabinoids to be studied. And in order to circumvent the bad quality of cannabis, or the recreational rather than medical use of it, there are many strategies that could be used. And these strategies could include increasing the CBD content of cannabis, and therefore targeting vulnerable populations for interventions. And this explains why the 2020 cannabidiol case rendered by the CJEU shows that cannabis cannot be considered in itself harmful, because there are different compositions of it. And the UN even reclassified it in 2020, removing it from the Schedule 1 category under the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. Then, the cannabis legalization is also still at an early stage, so there's considerable uncertainty regarding the extent to which current cannabis use in the medical field can be considered harmful. It will depend on part on how the legal market is regulated and taxed, and it will also depend on whether legal cannabis is regulated in ways that increase or decrease harms caused by cannabis. We therefore need to invest in research and innovation at a European level to build an evidence to base the effectiveness of treatments derived from the cannabis plant, whether they include CBD, THC, or other cannabinoids. This research would therefore allow one to have more conclusive evidence on whether cannabis is harmful or not, which it is not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite now University of Poitiers to present their first argument.
Hello, everyone. I would like to confirm that I'm visible and audible. Thank you. I thank the opposing team for their argument. I would like to say that we acknowledge the existence of these different strategies that you mentioned. However, this still leaves room for a lot of uncertainty around the substance. And we also agree about the need of investing in research to have more conclusive data about the substance. However, as of today, the amount of data that we have and the amount of studies that we have are, in our opinion, insufficient to grant the legal basis to legalize cannabis. Moreover, I would like to reaffirm the argument that my first speaker mentioned regarding the altered chemical compound of the cannabis plant as of today. In the United States especially, it is altered to have more THC in the plant. And this means that the studies that have been conducted on the natural, more traditional cannabis plant are not relevant today and valid today in relations to this fact, because they were done on a plant that had a vastly different chemical compound than we have today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like now to invite University of Lille to present their second argument.
Thank you. Before I start, am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Thank you. I thank the opposing team for their arguments, and to answer, as we said in our previous argument, the lack of data would be resolved by further research due to the legalization of medical cannabis. Furthermore, the actual idea that cannabis has a lot of positive impact in the medical field can be based on the fact that it has been used for centuries in traditional medicine. For instance, in ancient China, where cannabis is actually one of the 50 fundamental herbs in Chinese medicine, it was used to treat wounds, menstrual disorders, and nervous disorders, and so on. It was also used in Egypt for relieving pain or hemorrhoids, and in ancient India for insomnia, headaches, and all other pains. It was used in ancient Greece, in medieval Islamic world, and even in modern history, where William Brooke Oceanarcy actually introduced the medical benefits of cannabis in the Western world. Today, there are people on the spectrum of Asperger's disease, for instance, or people suffering from epilepsy that have realized and experienced the benefits of this particular drug that is cannabis and proclaim it as the only option to relieve their pain. So since the 1970 US Congress that scheduled marijuana as having no accepted medical use, since then, 35 out of 50 US states have legalized the medical use of marijuana. So why shouldn't other states and other countries in the world explore the benefits of this medicine? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like now to invite University of Poitiers to give their second argument.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you for your interesting argument. I would like to start with saying that while we respect traditional medicine and we still use some of the practices that have been practiced for 1,000 years, the fact that some substance has been used to treat this or that disease does not guarantee its inherent positive effect. I would like to reaffirm the fact that medical marijuana dispensaries today are often run by people who do not have any training at all, and with no clinical trials existing or enough data to strictly write out the necessary dose for a patient. this process of treatment with marijuana strictly becomes a trial and error, which is objectively irresponsible in regards to patients that we are trying to guarantee the safety of. Moreover, I would like to assert that medical marijuana and medical cannabis, to be used in treatment, every patient receives the substance differently. Therefore, every patient needs a different dosage, and this has been confirmed by a lot of studies done by Statica between the years of 2004 and 2015. Therefore, for this, the determination of the dosage is extremely inconsistent. Therefore, placing the patient under the risk of suffering even more and not achieving the same results as they would have had if they had been treated by traditional medicine. Therefore, we believe that until there is more research done, we cannot legalize medical cannabis. And I would like to say and mention that medical research can be done on illegal drugs as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your argument. I would like to invite now University of Lille to present their last argument.
Yeah, thank you. Am I visible and audible? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your answer. I think a state shall legalize cannabis for medical effects. To recap our arguments, firstly, there are more benefits than risks because medical cannabis can have beneficial to patients suffering from illness such as cancer, glaucoma, or even epilepsy, mainly because medical cannabis can relieve chronic pains and also allows them to enjoy the life as they can. You talk about the fact that cannabis can have negative effects, but anything smoke can lead to lung issue and can cause cancer or other disease. That's the reason why medical cannabis will be used with oil, for example, in this case. Moreover, we need to legalize medical cannabis because it's a better competition compared to other pharmaceuticals. The composition of this medical cannabis is known compared to other pharmaceuticals that are allowed. You say that the CBD is not natural, but I am not totally sure that pharmaceuticals that are allowed today are. And if it is really, why is the UN for now reclassify it? I'm not totally understand this point. And between chemotherapies that are exclusively based on chemicals that destroy human cell without even knowing if it will work, and on the other hand, therapeutical cannabis, which is much more natural because it comes from plant and will have a safe and more direct effects, I think we can choose more easily. And finally, with this legalization, we'll follow also a government control with more regulation and then less traffic. And to illustrate my words, France is now the champion for recreational cannabis consumption, according to the European Drug Report of 2019, without even having legalized it. So maybe by authorizing it for medical reason, the use will be much more supervised and therefore more informed and safe. And finally, at the end of December 2018, the French National Agency for Safety of Medicine deemed that it's relevant to authorize the use of the plant in certain clinical situations.
I'm afraid your time is up now.
Okay,
but thank you for your arguments, and I would like to invite University of Poitiers to give their final argument as well.
Am I visible and audible? Yes, okay. First, I want to thank the opposite team with its interesting arguments, and I don't think so that if you just legalize cannabis to thinking that the population will consume much less legalizing it because it's just legalized and it will be good solution. I don't think so, because it's just ignoring a problem. And to conclude on the topic, medical cannabis must be legalized by state authorities. My colleague Zeda and I agreed to say that legalization of cannabis would be the door open to all sorts of abuses. First and foremost, I must remind us that cannabis is internationally classified as a drug. Yeah. Legalizing medical cannabis means making drugs much more acceptable and accessible for the population. It is turning a drug to medicine from something that's harming to something that cures. In fact, as Leona already said, a prolonged use of medical cannabis has effective effects on cognitive and psychomotor systems. The risk is to make patients more highly addicted to this drug. And I will even go further. As long as the patient has its pathology and prescription, there is no problem because medical cannabis is a medication in its hypothesis. But since the prescription expires, the addicted patient will try to find another way to consume cannabis by claiming to still have his pathology, faking some papers and things, or turning to the black market. For this reason, we think that medical cannabis should not be legal, but it is an opportunity to rethink medical systems. The medical field is opaque and it could be changed, informing patients about medication and creating them personalized doses for them to have control over their own health. Thank you. Avoiding legalizing of cannabis drugs.
Thank you very much for your arguments. Now we have concluded our debate, and thank you for all the participants for that. We can move on to receiving the feedback from our judges. I can invite perhaps Dr. Petra Lindhout to present us with her feedback on the participants' performance.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. Yes, we can hear you very well.
Yes, well, thank you very much for this interesting debate. I will, of course, share a bit more extensive feedback on paper to the organization. But first of all, I would like to compliment both teams on debating such a very topical topic, actually. I don't know how it is in France, but in the Netherlands, there's always an ongoing debate on whether or not to legalize what we call soft drugs. So when I was listening to the arguments from both sides, many of them are very familiar also in the societal debate in the Netherlands. What I very much enjoyed is, first of all, that you've both taken notice of the fact that you have a counterparty. Not everyone does recognize that in pleadings, but from a courtesy point of view, that is a very important thing to do first, because otherwise, if you do not realize that not other parties are not necessarily listening to you. What I found was that when I look at the pleadings of the University of Lille, I found you very well prepared on content level. If you want to strengthen your debate order, it would be recommendable, especially because you're also doing that online, to give just a 30-second intro, like I'm going to structure my pleading like this: point 1, point 2, point 3. I'll start with point 1, something like that. And that also applies a bit to the University of Poitiers, because sometimes when you're only listening, you need to have an imaginary PowerPoint, thinking how will the structure be, especially in the opening pleadings. But it was a pleasure to listen to both of you. What I appreciated, actually in both, but at different stages in the pleadings, was that, and in the debate, was that you both were able to let's say, put emotions in your arguments, because you don't have an audience that you can see. So I could not see the rest of the audience responding, but I very much like that you've then included it in the way you've approached the question that was put forward, or the statement that was put forward. So it will take me a small evening to write down my feedback for you, and I hope that you will receive it also from the organization. But for now, my big and huge compliments to both of the teams here and to all of you individuals for having presented a very enjoyable debate on a very topical topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lindhout. I would like to invite now Mr. Michael Radwan from Masaryk University to perhaps give his feedback as well.
Good evening. Congratulations, because both teams were perfect, and you are really very well prepared. It would be interesting if you changed your positions to hear maybe other arguments. Anyway, I made several notes, and I will be more detailed on paper. However, it's really pity we can't see you face to face, because online version is really very limited. For example, I'm completely missing your body language. Maybe that's because we can see just a small screen, and that's not enough to see as well your emotions. And yeah, I have to agree with the structuring of your presentations. It's necessary for the listeners, because if you are talking for 3-5 minutes, it's really complicated for people who are listening you for the first time to catch everything. So if as Dr. Linaut already said, this is necessary to at least briefly announce what are you talking about and what will be the structure. So it will take me some time to give all the points and not to forget anything. Definitely congratulations at the moment, because you both are perfect.
Thank you very much, Mr. Radvan. And I would like to invite now Miss Anna Matzak to present her feedback for the teams as well.
Good evening, everyone. A lot has already been said, so I don't want to sound like I repeat what my colleagues just said. But first of all, congratulations. I very much enjoyed listening to this debate. I think the level of your argumentation and style of presenting your arguments was very, very even between these two groups. I have some thoughts as well. Of course, I will also share them in a much more detail in my feedback. But it was a very enjoyable debate for me as a criminologist to listen as well. How you presented some of these arguments was a real joy, and I wish that some of our politicians could could keep the same standard of dialogue and debate in our public sphere. So again, congratulations, and I hope that you will stick to this style of argumentation and debate in your future career. I will share only one observation, the difference that I noticed between the groups. I think the first group, the group from the University of Lille, I think probably, that was at least my impression, rehearsed a little bit more and maybe invested a little bit more time into preparations to this debate. However, the second group from the University of Poitiers had that benefit that I could still see some more of individual and spontaneous reactions to some of the counter arguments coming from the second team, which I think replaced this what we are all longing for in the online environment, the body language and spontaneity, etc. So that was a small difference that at this stage I would like to share with you. But again, the strength of your arguments, the style of presenting these arguments, the acknowledgement of the other side and what they've just shared was very even between these two groups. It was very enjoyable debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Matzak. And I would like to invite now Ms. Lauri Rastello to also give her feedback to the two teams.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm sorry I'm not putting the video on because I'm at work and my colleagues are right behind me, so you'll forgive me. Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the debate. I really enjoyed the subjects as well, so that was very good. It's a very actual debate. It happens everywhere in France as well nowadays. So I noted very good arguments on both sides, both legal and medical, which was very good because it broadens the debate. It was very interesting for me. In that regard, it's very good. I think it gives weight to your argument. If you give more sources, for example, it really helps us understand where you got all this information and really gives us a bit of context. So it's easier to follow, etc. And it really gives weight to the arguments. But they were very convincing on both sides. So that was very good. And as was already said, it was quite even between the both of you. Sometimes you can see there's a team that's a bit better than the other, or has more stress, or here it was very even. All of you had a good rhythm. We could see no stress. So that's quite difficult to do when you're on video and you can't see how your audience reacts. So very good for this. Well done. And I'll give you more, obviously, feedback on paper, but that was very good for both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rastello. This concludes our today's session. We will process the feedback that the judges have written down in the following days, and we'll announce the results as soon as we have all the notes and the grades from the judges. And as well, sometime next week probably, or just as soon as we have all the results from the judges, we will also have a small closing ceremony where we will invite all the participants and announce the results of the final and semi-final of today. I would like to thank you all for participating and our honorable judges for their feedback and attention as well. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. Have a lovely weekend yourself.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.